Hey everybody, it is Erin, and we are going to make some fun little project using some staplers and, well, staples in general, and just some paper and a little bit of some markers and then some Xyron stuff. It's kind of a fun idea on doing staple art, and we're going to create a little card. So the first thing is we got to cut up our paper. Now this is just a cardstock, a white cardstock, and this is an 8.5 by 11. So I'm actually going to cut this thing in half to 5.5. And when you take an 8.5 and 11 sheet of paper and you cut it down to 5.5, this side becomes your card. And I don't want to waste the other half of my card, so I'm just going to fold this in half, or the other half of my paper, I should say. I'm going to fold this in half, and this becomes the basis of my card right here. Okay, now with this half, and this is the new swing line guillotine, and I love it. I've actually used it on a bunch of stuff to cut like mass quantities, or if I'm just, I was actually creating card kits the other day for a card class, and this thing was so much easier than my other paper trimmer that I use. So in some ways, I love this for doing lots and lots of cuts. Okay, so now I want to be able to fit, and I'm going to start at 2 inches just to see how I like that size. And I also love, and I just have it off, but there's a measuring system right here, and it's fantastic because I can easily see all the markings, and I can measure how long something is, or I can come here and do the same thing. And there's also in centimeters, which is kind of fun. Okay, obviously this is going to be the right length, and so I have 1, 2, I'm gonna go. I wanted to make these squares, but I think I'm going to have to cut these down to 1.5. So I'm cutting this down, and it's got these little grid lines so I can make sure I have it lined up correctly. And so we're going to cut little 1.5 inch squares here. Now, one thing I have found is that if I'm going to cut 1.5 inch squares, I could easily do this, and I can come to here, and I can do it that way. Or if I know the length of my object here, so for instance, I'm going to make my math easy. So this is a 3-inch square. So if I cut this down, pretend this was a 4.5 inch square. If I went to 3, I know the length of my paper would be 1.5. There's so many different ways to cut. All right, so let's see if these are the right size, what I'm looking for. I'm going to go ahead and lock this up because I think I'm done with my paper trimmer, which is pretty cool. Here's what we're going to work with. I have a brand new stapler from Swingline, and I was actually playing with this earlier, and I've already done one, and I'm going to do another one. I'm going to take one of the staples. I'm actually going to cut it in half, and I'm going to finish this. I'm going to show you. These are Bic Markets. They are a marker that actually sticks to metal. So if you want to have a color, you just color it. It's as simple as that. They're an alcohol base. They're going to stick to this. So I'm sure other alcohol markers, I don't have as many colors in the other ones, but I know these work fantastic on here. I was playing with it earlier. So this one, I'm going to slice, well, I didn't do that very well in half, but I'm going to take this section right here, and I'm going to do it in blue. And they don't need to be perfect because nobody's really going to be seeing each individual color on there. I kind of like the fact that they're a little bit distressed, meaning that there's a little bit of a maybe separation of some colors on there. I think that's kind of fun. And the last one I'm going to do is going to be in pink. I just like these 3 color combinations. I think they're pretty. And this is just a nice light pink. So if you don't want to go out and buy colored staples, this is a nice alternative. You can color them yourself. And there's 5,000 staples in here. I feel like I've hardly even dented this. So, you know, a couple of strands of coloring them is not a big deal. All right, go ahead and pop them in like any other old stapler. No big deal. And it's a fun way of getting something kind of crafty out of something that is just a staple and staples. Okay, now I need a pencil. I'm going to do some staple art on here, and I am just going to do some really easy little drawing. And it's not going to look perfect. I'm going to make the same drawing on both, and we're just going to do them. Now, you could do different. I have found nature seems to work better for this because there's no rhyme or reason to the nature. And I, at this point, can kind of erase if I don't like the look of it. They're not identical, but they're close. So here's another one. So not identical, but they're kind of fun. This is where you're going to start working. Okay, we are going to make staples. We are basically going to trace our pattern with our staples. Now, when you do this, I know I keep flipping the staple around as I want to be able to. You got to be able to know where your staple is actually coming out. So if you want to practice, you can draw yourself a line and go, okay, I want to staple on the line. You got to be able to know where your staple is, and see, it looks green. You got to be able to know where your line is. So it's not in the front. If you look on the stapler, it's a little bit recessed. So you gotta, and if it's not perfect every time, it's not a big deal. But you can start creating some really kind of fun staple art, which is what we're doing here. Now, I may mess up a couple of times, and that's gonna happen. But when it comes to doing, so see where I'm going here? When it comes to doing art like this, especially, this is why I say doing nature is kind of fun. The messier it kind of looks, the better. So we're beginning to get kind of the look of what the plant looks like. You cannot use a thin paper for this. It will not work. And because you're putting a few staples in, see, I kind of messed that one up. Because you're making it nice and thick, it's not going to show your pencil mark. It's going to kind of cover it up. And if you get one that kind of pulls out because it went on top and it couldn't staple below, yank it out and do the next one. So here's one that just doesn't want to kind of pull, so I'm just pulling it through. It's getting kind of stubborn. There we go. It's getting a little stubborn. And there it is. It's got a little hint of that green. It's not super obvious. It's just a fun little shape. And it is going to be a little bit wonky. So that's okay. I'm fine with that. So now I'm going to move on to a different color. And I didn't use a ton, so I'm going to end up having a ton of the blue left over. So I'm going to go to this guy, and I'm going to do the same thing, but since you know what I'm doing, I'm just going to speed it up. All right, so I'm also going to do another one. I decided to do a big one, and this time I cut my paper. I just took another sheet 8.5 by 11, took the other half, folded one, and then took the other half and cut it down to being a 5-inch tall by 3 3/4. So kind of made it a little bit of a border. And this time I'm going to do the same pattern. I kind of like this feel, but make it into a bigger tree. So I'm going to go tall and then start branching out. You know, and if you notice, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to kind of change. This time I'm going to do a blend. So what I'm going to do here is I've got a new set of staples, and I've got a light and a dark green in the marker. So I'm going to start off with, I'm going to do a little batch. I'm going to do them in sections. So I don't know which one I'm going to get. It's going to be kind of random. So I'm going to make this look kind of zebra print between the colors. I don't want to do too many of one color. So it's going to be, you know, a few. And then there's going to be some that are kind of blended. So they're going to have a blend of the colors. And if I run short and I notice there's a silver that pops out, I can always open it up and see where I'm kind of at. But so now I'm going to do this. So that's another way of doing it. Instead of doing separate strands, you could do like a zebra if you're not worried about which colors pop out. So same technique, go in. Follow, you know, I'm going to kind of go along the top here. I'm going to start following my lines. You know, if you were really good, and I've gotten better as I've done it, I tell you what, because I still do some that are not exactly on the line. If you were really good, you could do very precise stapling and do very cool works of art. I'm not that good yet. So as much as I've been practicing lately, it's not been that great. But if you wanted to, but I like the look of having the multiple, the layers going on. See, I just screwed that up again. Where it looks like you've got a lot, you know, it's almost like the messier the better in some ways. And when you're trying to do something that is a floral, I know this is probably banging the thing. It makes it look like it's kind of like a fern. So that's what I was going for, like leaves on a tree is what each of the staples kind of looks like. So I'm going to keep on stapling away and speed this up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, now that I got kind of the basis for my thing, is I'm going to come in kind of like I've done here and add in more leaves to fill out my tree. So it's kind of like a pine tree is the look I'm going for. So I need a whole lot more staples. I went ahead and took the other light green and just added some bands of dark green on top. It worked just fine. I'm basically just adding in more leaves. I don't want to overstep the length of my quote-unquote bows, I guess is the best way to describe it. These are just individual little needles, so I'm not going as heavy as I am on for like what the main part of the tree is. I'm just adding accentuation pieces, so kind of like that. Now I felt like this just needs to come out a tiny bit more, so I'm gonna add a little more length to that particular, there we go. So now is when you can kind of go in and just tweak. There's no right or wrong. And there I go. It looks kind of like it's, you know, some sort of tree or fern. Now, there was a couple of spots you're going to see right here where backside looks kind of cool too, if you think about it. If you ever wanted to reverse it, you could always do that too. There was a couple spots where I think I overstapled in one spot too much, and so the staples were pulling out. So what it is, I just took another sheet of paper, put it on the back, and then when it stapled through, it actually clung to, and the staples weren't pulling out because it had something to grab onto on the back. So now that that is done, it is going to be a little bit warped. It is not going to be perfectly flat because you've got some dimension in there, which is absolutely fine. Okay, so just to add some definition and some separation, I want the staples and all of my cards to kind of be the wow factor. I'm just going to lightly ink the edges, which is why I just did this on white. You could do it on black, and I think it would look really pretty on the black too, because the staples would really shine. The metallic on there would be really, really pretty. That's kind of fun. So there's that. Just inking the edges. They pop when I put the white against the white. Creative Station, and this one's got the permanent adhesive in it. And I'm going to go ahead and run this guy through. And the adhesive will not only stick to the paper, but it will stick to the metal as well, which is why I'm using this. So running it through, run these little guys through too. Now I tell you what, if you ever wanted to do this particular crafty idea, it's a great way to get out your frustration because you're like on that stapler. It's kind of fun. All right, so now I'm going to take the plastic covering off of this. And these are all stickers. Now, when I lay this down, it's not going to lay super flat. So I'm going to see how well it lays on my card. And keeping in mind, I had a couple of different layers. And maybe it'll do the trick. Maybe I don't need to do anything else to get this to lay nice and flat on my card. I don't know, it did just fine. Look at that. I thought, oops, I got this. Of course I put this on crooked. You get a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to doing this. It's going to stay, but you get a little bit of just in case. So I just didn't do a very good job lining it up. There we go. And of course I made a little bit of an oopsie, but that's it. It's a very, very simple card. I'm going to smash this down. There's some spots that are a little higher, a little raised, but it's just kind of a different look. And there we go. Just something clean and simple. Let the staples do the work. Let the actual art of what you've done and spent time creating be like the focal point of it all. It does not have to be a fancy, fancy card because it's showing off the kind of the cool thing that you did. So fun way to kind of show off how to take a regular everyday item and create a work of art with it. Why not? Look at your stuff around you a little bit differently. I will list as many of the supplies as I can below. Thanks for stopping by. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye-bye.